"This is an order," Camilla said. No shouting, no warning, just one quiet command from the Queen Consort, spoken in front of staff, cameras, and the daughter of the future king. "Arrest her!" She meant Princess Charlotte. "And the guard?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch, didn't draw a weapon. He just asked one question. And in 6 seconds, the entire room turned against her. What happened next exposed a royal violation so serious. They had to seal the archive, suspend Camilla's access, and let the world witness a consort overreach the crown. Before we show you the guard's exact words and how Princess Charlotte stood without saying a thing, drop a comment telling us which country you're watching from, smash that like button, and make sure you're subscribed with the bell lit up. Because what Camilla tried to do was more than discipline. It was a line no royal is allowed to cross. And today, a Coldstream guard made sure she didn't. The sun slanted through the upper windows of the Royal Heritage Archive Wing, catching the faint shimmer of dust that never quite settled over shelves, sealed in climate-controlled glass. Light passed over engraved plaques, velvet-lined display cases, and angled reading desks where archivists moved with quiet reverence. The entire wing felt more like a monastery than a workplace, a sanctuary of memory, built not of prayer, but paper. At the far end of the corridor, a table had been cleared for the morning's viewing. Laid out in precise rows were several items from the Queen Elizabeth II personal correspondence collection, a small exhibit in progress meant for an international educational summit later that season. Though not yet open to the public, certain heirs were granted early viewings as part of their legacy training. Princess Charlotte had entered through the internal stairwell 5 minutes prior, her posture as crisp as her navy coat dress. At her side, Princess Catherine moved with familiar ease, greeting the archivists by name, her tone polite but efficient. A brief explanation was given. Charlotte would observe only, touch nothing without gloves, and remain within the designated study corridor. Stationed at the glass security threshold stood Sergeant Rowan Halberg, Coldstream Guard. His eyes scanned every shadowed angle, every subtle shift of staff movement. In his scarlet tunic, bearskin hat, and polished white belt, he looked like a figure carved into history. But beneath the ceremonial stillness was a man deeply attuned to deviation. And today, the silence had a certain tension to it. Not immediate, not loud, but brewing. Charlotte moved with care between the display cases, stopping now and then to peer at brass plaques beneath the artifacts. A condolence letter to a Commonwealth widow in 1962. A handwritten reply to a child in New Zealand. She asked no frivolous questions, only once whispering to her mother, "Did the Queen write this herself?" The answer, quietly affirmed, made her blink once and lean closer. Sergeant Halberg remained expressionless, but made a subtle note, air posture, disciplined. Situational awareness, calm. It was only when a new voice echoed from the outer hallway that the air shifted. "Oh dear, already underway." The tone was light, performative, but behind it lay ownership. Queen Camilla stepped into the wing without waiting for announcement. Her ivory gloves clutched a thin folder she did not consult, and her coat, a dove-grey number with overstated lapels, brushed too close to the archivist's display table. "I was told this would be an heir-supervised viewing," she said brightly, though no one had told her any such thing. "Naturally, I assumed I'd be present." No staff corrected her. Not yet. Not when the Queen Consort smiled like a guest and walked like a host. Charlotte straightened unconsciously. Catherine's brows dipped, but she remained composed. Rowan Halberg exhaled silently through his nose. Camilla's gaze swept the corridor until it landed on a rare item resting temporarily on a display side table, an unopened folio, its gold-tasseled seal still intact. A temporary brass plaque beneath it read, "Seal intact. Do not handle. Catalogue number 3-77. Charlotte leaned in, reading carefully, and Camilla's smile vanished. The room hadn't shifted. No boundary had been crossed. No rule broken. But something in Camilla's eyes turned sharp. "Step away from that," she said, voice flat. And for the first time that morning, the temperature in the archive wing dropped. Charlotte froze mid-lean, her hands nowhere near the sealed folio, her breath caught as if she'd stepped into a forbidden room. She turned her head slightly, unsure whether she'd misheard. The archivists exchanged subtle glances, the kind that move between professionals accustomed to hierarchy, but unprepared for confrontation. Camilla's heels clicked sharply across the polished floor as she crossed the secure barrier without pausing for clearance. She didn't ask the attending archivist to open the gate. She simply walked through, expecting the world to reshape around her presence. "Step away," she repeated, louder this time. "That document is not for you." Charlotte stepped back immediately, not out of guilt, but confusion. Her gloved hands folded neatly at her front, fingertips touching, posture perfect. She hadn't touched anything. She hadn't even reached toward the seal. "Ma'am," the senior archivist began softly, "the princess was only observing the—" Camilla cut him off with a single lifted finger. "I don't need commentary. I need proper handling of my instructions." Catherine, who had been quietly reviewing an adjacent case file with a curator, looked up at the shift in tone. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a mother's instinct detecting danger before words confirmed it. She crossed the short distance back toward her daughter, her voice warm but alert. "Everything all right here?" Camilla's answer was immediate, far too immediate, as though she'd been waiting for the chance to escalate. "Your daughter was interfering with sealed heritage property. She leaned over this—" She gestured dramatically toward the unopened folio, in a manner that suggested tampering. Charlotte's eyes widened. "I wasn't touching—" Camilla's hand sliced through the air. "Do not interrupt!" Rowan Halberg noted it. The way Charlotte's shoulders pinched inward at the reprimand. He shifted subtly, hands folding behind his back, chin lifting half an inch. A small movement, a guard's silent readiness. Catherine placed a hand on Charlotte's back. "She was reading a plaque, nothing more." Camilla laughed under her breath, a brittle, dismissive sound. "Reading, yes, that's the excuse. First, she leans too close, and now the tag has been misplaced entirely." A few archivists jolted. "The tag?" one repeated. Camilla pointed to the table. The small removable tracking slip, normally clipped to the folio's corner, was indeed missing. "Exactly," Camilla said triumphantly. "She removed it. Look at the surface, completely bare." Catherine frowned deeply. "Charlotte was with me the entire time." "Children move quickly when they want to hide something," Camilla countered. "And in my experience, heirs are not immune to a sense of entitlement." Charlotte stared, lips parted, wounded as if the accusation itself had weight. The head archivist tried again, voice gentler. "Ma'am, with respect, tracking slips sometimes loosen on their own." "Check the cameras," Camilla snapped. "If the princess is innocent, the footage will prove it." Her tone wasn't investigative. It was punitive, and every archivist in the wing understood it. The air thinned. Eyes shifted to Rowan Halberg, the red sentinel at the threshold, who stood perfectly still, save for the faint tightening at his jaw. A line was being crossed, and Camilla wasn't finished crossing it. The golden seal tag, no larger than a bookmark, was nowhere in sight. The brass plate on the folio still gleamed under the filtered museum-grade lighting, but the small laminated slip, usually pinned to the binding edge, marked with catalogue ID 3-77 and its preservation status, had vanished. Camilla folded her arms with an air of finality, as though this one visual absence had confirmed every suspicion. "She removed it," she declared, pointing straight at Charlotte. "It was here, now it's not. The implication is obvious." Charlotte's face flushed, not with guilt, but the sting of something she didn't fully understand, the kind of confusion that doesn't have a defense. Her voice came out thin and uneven. I just read the sign." "And in doing so," Camilla interrupted, "you got too close. Perhaps you brushed it accidentally. Perhaps you panicked and tried to conceal it. Either way—" "She didn't," Catherine said quietly, but her tone was no longer just maternal. It was measured, cold. You're drawing conclusions based on something that was already unstable. Camilla's eyes narrowed. Excusing children in public, that's what weakens the monarchy. No one's excusing anything, Catherine replied. We're stating facts. She hasn't touched that folio. She leaned over it with both hands. I saw it. Camilla gestured wildly now. You teach a child that rules are suggestions, and they'll grow into adults who treat institutions the same. One of the junior archivists, a young man in his 20s with rimless glasses and trembling hands, shifted behind the table, eyes darting to the floor. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Sergeant Rowan Halberg finally took one step forward, not toward anyone, just a repositioning, left foot sliding slightly in line with the shoulder, a stance reserved for increased alertness during tense ceremonial protocol. Among guards, it meant only one thing: prepare for escalation. Camilla ignored it. I don't care whose daughter she is, she said, her voice rising now. If we allow heirs to defy heritage protocol, we lose credibility. Consequences must apply across bloodlines. Charlotte looked up at her mother, not crying, not crumbling, but blinking hard to keep something inside. Rowan scanned the folio's surface. He noted the fine trail of dust, undisturbed along the folio's spine, no oil smudge from fingers, no fingerprint breakage in the light's sheen. But what caught his eye was something subtler, the light imprint where a tag had once rested. Not recently, but long enough ago that the outline had softened. He lowered his gaze toward the plinth side, the most likely place for a fallen tag to land. Nothing visible, yet. I want protocol action, Camilla snapped. This isn't about emotion. This is about process. Even royalty cannot mishandle royal property. She turned toward Rowan fully now, a step too close, a posture too imperious. I'm giving you a direct instruction. And that was the moment the tension shifted from discomfort to danger. The room held its breath. For a long moment, the only sound was the slow tick of the antique regulator clock on the far wall, and the distant hum of the air system keeping the folios preserved. Archivists stood like statues. Charlotte didn't move, and Queen Camilla, unmoved by the silence, took one final step forward. She turned fully toward Sergeant Rowan Halberg, eyes set, voice sharpened. Sergeant, she said crisply, pointing at Charlotte with her gloved hand, detain her. The words echoed with ceremonial weight, though spoken without legal force. Rowan didn't move, his gaze didn't break, his posture didn't change. Camilla's voice rose, slicing through the air. I said, arrest Princess Charlotte! Gasps broke the stillness like glass shattering. One archivist dropped a catalogue binder with a sharp clatter that reverberated down the corridor. The junior assistant near the entry backed 2 steps away from the display table. Charlotte's lips parted slightly, not in defiance, in disbelief. Across from her, Catherine's arm slowly, instinctively extended in front of her daughter. Rowan Halberg did not blink. His hands remained loosely at his sides. His weight shifted almost imperceptibly. The kind of motion guards are trained to make when the line between symbolic duty and real-world defense begins to blur. Camilla was still speaking, unaware she'd just trespassed into forbidden ground. She interfered with sealed heritage property, she barked. That is an arrestable breach. She's not exempt because she's a child, and neither are you, Sergeant. You follow orders. That's what you're sworn to do. A thick, charged silence followed. And in that silence, the weight of centuries came rushing in, because every person in the archive wing knew what had just happened. Not a slip of phrasing, not a misunderstanding. A consort had issued a command to arrest an heir. Rowan Halberg's heart was steady, his jawline set, his breathing even. But in his chest, a doctrine whispered from his earliest days of training, drilled into every guard assigned to proximity detail involving successors. No guard enforces detainment upon an heir, ever. The rule was older than the crown itself, a line written not in ink, but in precedent. Camilla's words still hung in the air like the echo of a distant bell. Everyone had heard them, and no one, not Catherine, not the staff, not the archivists, moved to support her. Only one person was authorized to act on a moment like this, and Rowan Halberg's next breath would decide how. Sergeant Rowan Halberg stood unmoving in his polished stance, the tall black bearskin of the Royal Guard casting a shadow that now stretched across the stone floor like a fault line. "Sergeant!" Camilla repeated, impatience rising behind her carefully powdered face. "You've been given a direct order. Detain her." She didn't say my step-granddaughter. She didn't say the child. She said it like she was naming a stranger. Charlotte's chin was tilted up now, not in defiance, but in wounded stillness. The small velvet bow in her hair trembled slightly with each breath she tried to suppress. Behind her, Catherine hadn't moved, but the angle of her shoulders had changed. Maternal defence, quiet and non-negotiable. Rowan's voice, when it came, was even, low. "Your instruction, ma'am, is to arrest the heir apparent." The phrasing was deliberate. Not Princess Charlotte, not the girl. Heir apparent. The constitutional language of legacy and law. It hung in the air like smoke, unignorable. Camilla's eyes narrowed. Yes, immediately. No hesitation, no reconsideration. Catherine turned her head slightly, speaking firmly across the silence. "You cannot give that order." Camilla didn't respond to her. She kept her focus trained on Rowan. "I outrank you within this space, Sergeant. You are ceremonial without chain of command discretion." A subtle murmur passed through the archivists. One of them, older, greying at the temples, leaned toward the head conservator and whispered, "She's using proximity override." "That's not valid here." Another, younger, paled. "That's air subjugation language. That's illegal." Still Rowan didn't move. He breathed once, slow, in, out. Not fear, calibration. The breath of a man ensuring he said the next sentence without deviation from doctrine. Charlotte glanced up at him, barely moving her head. There was no recognition in her gaze. Just hope that someone, anyone, knew what was happening wasn't right. Camilla's voice grew brittle. "You are sworn to serve the crown." "And I do," Rowan replied, voice low and steady. Her mouth curled. "Then obey your future queen." Catherine stepped fully between them now, shielding Charlotte's line of sight. "She is not yours to command." The line wasn't shouted, but it cut like a blade. Still Rowan did not flinch. Still his boots remained locked in position. But in his eyes, something shifted. Not emotion, not outrage. It was the click of training locking into place. A guard's mind crossing into doctrine mode. He knew what had just happened. And so did every member of the archive wing. Camilla had issued an illegal command. Now it was time for someone to ask the only question that mattered. Sergeant Rowan Halberg's shoulders straightened. Not as a warning, but as the quiet alignment of authority with law. He let the silence hold a moment longer. Not to punish, not to provoke, but because once the next words were spoken, the archive would never be the same. He looked at Camilla directly for the first time, then asked the question, calm, unblinking. "Under whose authority does a consort arrest a future sovereign?" The words didn't echo. They landed, dense, heavy, irrefutable. Camilla blinked. Just once. Every pair of eyes in the archive wing turned to her, not in deference, in reckoning. The title Queen Consort no longer hovered like a crown. It had collapsed into context. The archivists didn't move. They didn't need to. The weight of the question had done it for them. A sharp breath escaped from one of the junior staffers near the sealed folio. Another stepped back, instinctively aligning with the law, not the throne. Catherine exhaled, not relief, not triumph, just a mother's breath loosed after holding it too long. Even Charlotte, wide-eyed, processed the significance. She looked from Camilla to Rowan, realizing that stillness could speak louder than defense. Camilla's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Her eyes darted to the archivists, to Catherine, then back to Rowan. I was correcting misconduct, she said. You are obligated to act when an artifact is threatened. Rowan's voice did not rise. It needed no volume. Arrest powers over heirs belong only to the monarch, the Regency Council, or the Home Office. You are none of these. Camilla flinched, slightly, almost imperceptibly. But it was the first break in posture. The head archivist looked toward the security feed terminal, then back to Camilla. He's correct, she said softly. You do not hold custodial authority over heirs. Camilla turned her attention back to Rowan, now trying to regain the high ground. You've humiliated me in front of the staff. I will see to it that this is reviewed. Rowan didn't answer. He didn't need to, because she'd already lost the room. One question had shattered her assertion, and even the cameras, still recording in silent loops from the ceiling brackets, had captured the moment a consort attempted to overstep the throne. Charlotte, still beside her mother, finally breathed normally again, and from the corridor beyond the security glass, a ripple of movement stirred. Footsteps. Familiar, steady. Reinforcement was arriving, and Camilla was about to learn that when a guard asks the right question, the Crown answers next. The door at the far end of the corridor opened with a soft hydraulic click, not loud, but decisive. Prince William entered with clipped, deliberate steps, his dark overcoat still unbuttoned from a sudden departure. His expression was unreadable, but the set of his jaw said more than words ever could. He didn't pause to greet anyone. His eyes swept the room, calculating everything in a single glance, the positioning, the silence, the weight of everyone's attention converging on one spot. Charlotte. He saw his daughter standing still, partially behind Catherine, lips pressed together, not trembling, not crying, but bracing. He saw Camilla, flushed and rigid, as if caught mid-performance, and he saw Rowan Halberg, centred, unwavering. One pace ahead of protocol, just far enough into history to have made a stand. Someone tell me what happened, William said quietly. Camilla moved first. She interfered with a sealed document, she said, gesturing toward the folio. She removed the tracking tag, and when I attempted to correct her, I was blocked. William's gaze didn't move from her. Camilla tried again. Charlotte, was too close to the table. The item had no tag. I was protecting the archive's integrity. Charlotte looked up. I didn't touch it. Catherine gently rested a hand on her daughter's back. She was reading a plaque. I was 10 feet away. She leaned forward. Nothing more. William turned to the archivists. Did anyone witness the princess make contact with the artifact? Silence. Then the head archivist stepped forward, eyes solemn. No, sir. The princess was observed reading only. No touch, no interference. Camilla opened her mouth again, but William raised a hand. You gave an arrest order? He asked, eyes now locked on her. I issued a detainment instruction, she replied defensively. The guard refused it. Rowan spoke, not to justify himself, but to state the rule. Your Royal Highness, the command issued was to arrest the heir apparent. I asked for clarification. The order was repeated verbatim. William's face didn't move, but the light in his eyes sharpened. You gave an arrest order, he repeated, this time not as a question. Camilla stiffened. Don't twist this. I acted within the room's hierarchy. William stepped forward slowly, his voice still low. There is no room in this palace where you outrank the line of succession. No one spoke. Even the air felt smaller. Then William turned back to the room at large. Did anyone in this room witness misconduct by my daughter? He asked calmly. Silence answered him, and Camilla, for the first time since she entered, had no words ready. As the silence thickened, Rowan Halberg broke formation, not out of rebellion, but responsibility. He moved toward the folio table with precise, measured steps, scanning the surfaces, edges and floor with the forensic gaze of a man trained to notice what others dismiss. He crouched slightly, eyes trailing the leg of the display plinth and the thin gap beneath its base. Then, Without drama, he extended one gloved hand toward the shadowed corner beneath the stand. From the darkness, he withdrew a small laminated card, slightly curled at one corner, the adhesive half worn, its seal number still intact. "No!" Rowan rose and held it up between thumb and forefinger. "The tracking tag," he said clearly so that all could hear, "recovered behind the plinth, undisturbed. There is no evidence it was removed by hand." The senior archivist stepped forward, adjusting her glasses. She took the tag from him carefully, examining the faded adhesive. She then checked the imprint beneath the folio, where the dust had settled in a shape nearly identical to the tag's dimensions. "This predates today's visit," she confirmed. "The adhesive likely failed during climate cycling. This room's air pressure fluctuated during yesterday's sensor test. It must have slipped off then." A soft murmur of realization moved across the room. Not shock, not drama, just the collective shifting of weight that happens when truth arrives and the air rights itself. William turned slowly toward Camilla. "You ordered the arrest of a child," he said, voice quiet, but louder than anything that had come before, "based on a missing label, without evidence, without due process." Camilla's voice cracked at the edges. "I was protecting Crown property." "No," William cut in, "you were attempting to punish her, and you did it in front of witnesses." Catherine moved slightly, placing her hand again on Charlotte's shoulder, not shielding her now, but reminding her she wasn't alone, not here, not ever. Rowan stepped forward and returned the tracking tag to the senior archivist's gloved hands. He didn't speak. His motions were exact, formal. The kind of practiced care only the highest-tier guards deployed in artifact rooms or air chambers. And in that single act, returning the tag to its rightful keeper, the room reset itself. Not through apology, but through order. Camilla's mouth opened again, faintly, a final attempt to salvage narrative. But no one met her eyes. Not after what had been proven, not after what had been said. Not after one question had done what 1,000 courtiers wouldn't. Draw the line. William didn't look at Camilla when he spoke next. He addressed the senior archivist, his tone clipped and procedural. "Log the incident," he said. "Full witness statements from all staff present. Send a transcript to the Lord Chamberlain by this evening." The archivist nodded once, already lifting her clipboard. Camilla stiffened. "You're overreacting." William turned to her now, slowly, deliberately. "You attempted to exercise arrest powers over an heir of the crown. In front of personnel, without sovereign clearance, without cause." Her chin lifted. "I was correcting misconduct." "No," he said again, firmer. "You were asserting control, and when you didn't get it, you escalated." She blinked, stunned that he hadn't softened. William gestured toward the archivist again. "Effective immediately! Queen Consort Camilla's custodial access to the Heritage Archive is suspended pending formal review." Gasps did not follow, only a heavy, confirming silence. This wasn't scandal. It was inevitability. 2 senior household officers entered from the side gallery. Not armed, not hostile, but unmistakably official. Their tailored uniforms bore the royal insignia, and their very presence said everything. Protocol had been breached, and correction had begun. Camilla took a step back. "You're humiliating me." William didn't flinch. "No, you did that yourself." One officer approached her gently, offering a corridor exit route without contact. The other paused, waiting for her to move. No one touched her. No force was needed. Catherine crouched slightly beside Charlotte, brushing a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "You're all right," she whispered. Charlotte nodded faintly. She still hadn't spoken, hadn't needed to. As Camilla was escorted toward the arched passage, her shoes clicked louder than before, a sound without power, only echo. She passed Rowan Halberg without meeting his eyes. He didn't move, didn't bow, didn't speak. He stood like a pillar between what had happened and what wouldn't be allowed to happen again. William turned to him. "One question stopped an abuse of protocol. Well done." Rowan replied evenly, voice clear but humble. "I only upheld the law, sir." William gave a slight nod. Not exaggerated, not for show, but one soldier to another, a signal of mutual understanding. The archivists began returning to their positions. The lights above the display cases glowed softly once again. For the first time in 20 minutes, the archive wing felt like itself. And in the fading sound of Camilla's footsteps, something larger than embarrassment had left the room, something that would not return. The room hadn't fully thawed, but the air was no longer frozen. The archivists resumed their duties with careful, deliberate motions. Aides whispered updates into radios, not for damage control, but to mark that the disruption had passed. The Queen Consort was gone. Order had returned. Princess Charlotte remained still, her small gloved hands clasped neatly in front of her, the polished toe of one shoe tracing an invisible line along the floor's edge. She wasn't crying, but the silence around her clung like a heavy coat she hadn't chosen to wear. Catherine leaned down beside her, brushing her thumb once across the back of Charlotte's hand. "You did nothing wrong," she said softly, "and you stood with dignity." Charlotte turned her head slightly. "She told him to arrest me." "She did," Catherine replied, "and he didn't." A beat of quiet passed. Then Charlotte nodded. A slow, careful motion, like a young branch under wind refusing to snap. William approached from behind, stopping a respectful distance away. He said nothing, only stood, watching as his daughter straightened her shoulders again. The senior curator, now calm, stepped forward gently with a linen-wrapped folder, not the sealed folio from before, but a different artifact. "If Her Royal Highness would like to continue her educational review," she offered, "we have something Queen Elizabeth wrote when she was 10. Charlotte blinked. "She was my age?" "Exactly." Charlotte looked to her mother, who smiled in encouragement. "She'd want you to see it." Rowan Halberg opened the glass panel with one clean gesture. No ceremony, just precision. Charlotte stepped forward and approached the new artifact with renewed posture. The letter, faded and graceful in its cursive loops, rested between archival mounts. At the bottom, a line in Elizabeth's own hand, "Let them teach me what matters, and I shall remember it always." Charlotte read it twice, then a third time. When she stepped back, the weight in her chest had lessened. As the viewing concluded, Rowan resumed his guard position near the exit. Charlotte paused beside him before leaving. She glanced up once. "She wanted me arrested. For reading," she said, not bitterly, but as someone still trying to understand. Rowan's reply was soft, spoken only to her. "You were learning, ma'am, and the Crown protects learning, not punishes it." She nodded slowly, and they walked out together. A mother, a daughter, and a guard who had asked the one question that history had been waiting to hear. Should Camilla face permanent suspension from royal duties after this? Did the guard's single question protect the crown better than anyone else could? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you believe legacy deserves to be defended, tap like, hit subscribe, and make sure that bell icon's on. Then share this story with someone who still believes in royal duty. More Royal Guard reversals are appearing on your screen now. Watch them next, and we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, brand new video.